There comes a moment in life when silence becomes your greatest weapon, not the silence of weakness, but the silence of wisdom, the kind of silence that protects your dignity, your power, your legacy. As you grow older, you begin to understand something most people learn too late. Not everything you know should be spoken, not everything you feel should be revealed, because the world does not reward transparency. It studies it, it analyzes it. And sometimes it uses it against you. In your youth, you are encouraged to express, to share, to open up without limits. But age teaches a different law, a law of restraint, of control, of quiet dominance. There are truths, deeply personal truths, that must remain guarded like a treasure hidden beneath layers of time, not because you are afraid, because you are wise enough to understand their value. You see, power is not always in what you show. It is often in what you choose to conceal. And as the years pass, your greatest strength will not be your experiences alone, but your ability to protect them. Today, I will reveal to you 5 things you must never share in old age if you want to preserve your respect, your influence, and your inner peace, because in the final chapters of life, those who speak less often control more. There is a dangerous illusion that comes with age, belief that honesty earns respect, but reality operates differently. The moment you begin to openly share your financial situation, whether it is abundance or struggle, you unknowingly surrender a part of your power. Money, in its essence, is not just currency. It is perception. It is influence. It is control over how others measure your worth. And in old age, this becomes even more critical. When you reveal your wealth, people stop seeing you and start calculating you. They measure your value not by your wisdom, but by your possessions. Conversations subtly shift, tensions quietly change. Some will admire you, but not for who you are. They admire what you have. Others will envy you silently, patiently, waiting for a moment of weakness. And then there are those who will see opportunity, opportunity to borrow, opportunity to depend, opportunity to manipulate. You may think, these are my own people, my family, my friends. But time reveals a harsh truth. Even the closest relationships can be influenced by money. When people know your financial standing, they adjust their behavior. Respect becomes conditional. Love becomes negotiable. Now consider the opposite. When you reveal your struggles, your limitations, your financial difficulties, you invite a different kind of danger, pity, and pity is the silent destroyer of dignity. The world is not kind to vulnerability when it comes to money. It may offer sympathy, but it will quietly reduce your authority. People begin to speak differently around you. They exclude you from decisions. They assume your weakness. And worst of all, they stop taking your words seriously. In both cases, wealth or struggle, you lose. So what is the solution? You create mystery. You become unreadable. Your financial life becomes a closed book, one that no one can fully interpret. This does not mean you live in fear or isolation. It means you operate with awareness. You understand that information is leverage, and once given away, it cannot be reclaimed. In your younger years, sharing might build connections, but in old age, it builds expectations, and expectations are chains. Think carefully. How many conflicts in families begin with money? Inheritance disputes, resentments, unspoken comparisons, all of them rooted in knowledge that was never meant to be shared so freely. The wise learn to control the narrative. They speak of values, not valuables. They share lessons, not numbers. They allow people to respect them for their mind, their experience, their presence, not their bank balance, because once people define you by money, they stop seeing everything else. And here lies the deeper truth. Your greatest asset in old age is not wealth itself. When people believe you are self-sufficient, they treat you with caution, with distance. But the moment they sense dependency, everything changes. Power shifts, and power, once lost, is rarely returned. So guard this part of your life. Protect it, not out of secrecy, out of strategy. You are not hiding, you are preserving control. Remember this. Not everyone who asks about your finances is curious. Some are calculating. Not everyone who shows concern is caring. Some are assessing. And not every conversation deserves your truth. In the final stage of life, Your peace depends on what you choose not to reveal, because silence in the right place is not emptiness, it is power. There is a deeper form of vulnerability that does not show itself through money or possessions, one through emotion, and as you grow older, this becomes the most dangerous form of exposure. Because unlike wealth, emotional history cannot be measured, it can be exploited. The past you carry inside you, your regrets, your heartbreaks, your betrayals, your family conflicts, these are not just memories. They are leverage points in the hands of others. And the harsh truth is this: most people do not know how to handle emotional truth with responsibility. They may listen, but they rarely forget. And even more rarely, they remain unchanged by it. This is why silence becomes essential, not emotional suppression, emotional strategy. A man or woman in old age is often tempted to speak freely about their past, to explain themselves, to justify their pain, to finally be understood. But understanding is not always what you receive. Sometimes judgment is sometimes labeling, and sometimes quiet manipulation disguised as concern. You may think you are sharing your story, when in reality you are distributing pieces of your emotional architecture to people who may not respect it, especially when it comes to family. Family is the most complex battlefield of emotional truth because love and resentment often live in the same room. You might speak about old arguments, long forgotten betrayals, childhood disappointments, thinking it will bring healing, but instead it reopens invisible wounds that never truly healed, and worse, it reshapes how others see you. Once you reveal emotional weakness, people begin to categorize you, not as someone who has grown beyond pain, one as someone who is still defined by it. This is the subtle collapse of authority in old age. When your emotional history becomes public knowledge, you lose control over how your identity is interpreted. People begin to say things like, "He is still sensitive about that. She never really recovered from that situation. They are not as strong as they seem." And slowly, your past becomes your present in their perception. This is the danger Robert Greene often alludes to in his exploration of human psychology, that once people have a pattern to understand you, they stop seeing you as a mystery and start seeing you as a predictable narrative. And predictable people are no longer powerful. So what happens when you share too much? You lose ambiguity, and ambiguity is protection. When people cannot fully define you, they behave more carefully around you. They hesitate before judging, they think twice before manipulating. But when your emotional life is exposed, you become readable, and readable people become vulnerable. There is also another hidden consequence. When you repeatedly share emotional wounds, you unconsciously relive them. Each retelling strengthens the emotional imprint. Each explanation reinforces the pain. What could have faded with time is revived through speech. So in old age, wisdom is not just about what you remember, what you refuse to revisit. Not every memory deserves narration, not every scar deserves an audience, and not every emotional truth deserves air. There is a powerful discipline in withholding emotional history. It does not mean denial. It means containment. You carry your past, but you do not distribute it. You acknowledge your pain, but you do not broadcast it. Because the more you explain your wounds, more ownership others take of them. And once others feel they understand your emotional structure, they begin to influence it. They know what triggers you. They know what weakens you. They know where your unresolved emotions still live. And this knowledge, if misused, becomes subtle control. Even in conversations, they can steer you emotionally without you realizing it. A single sentence, a single reference to your past can shift your entire state of mind. That is why the wise become selective speakers. They talk about ideas, not injuries. They discuss wisdom, not wounds. They focus on insight, not interpretation. There is also dignity in emotional privacy, because when you do not constantly revisit your suffering, you begin to rise above it. You stop being a storyteller of your pain and start becoming the author of your present. And people respect that more than vulnerability, not because they are cold, because strength is universally understood, even unconsciously. A person who does not constantly expose their emotional past is perceived as stable, grounded, unshaken, and stability in old age is a form of influence. Now consider the alternative. The more you share emotional details, more people feel entitled to comment on them. They offer opinions you did not ask for. They reinterpret your life in ways you never intended. They assign meanings to your experiences that suit their worldview, not yours. And slowly, your emotional narrative stops belonging to you. It becomes public property. This is why silence is not emptiness. It is ownership. Ownership of your story, ownership of your interpretation, ownership of your identity. There is also a deeper psychological truth. Humans respect what they cannot fully access. Mystery creates distance. Distance creates respect. Respect creates protection. But emotional overexposure destroys all three. So in old age, wisdom is not about speaking more truth, is about filtering truth through consequence. Ask yourself, will this information strengthen my dignity or weaken my control? Will this story elevate my presence or reduce me to my past? Will this sharing create respect or familiarity that borders on disrespect? Because familiarity without boundaries is dangerous. It leads to people forgetting your depth. And once depth is forgotten, you are treated as shallow regardless of your life experience. So the rule is simple but profound. Your emotional history is yours to carry, not yours to distribute. You may reflect on it, you may learn from it, you may grow because of it, but you do not hand it over to casual interpretation. In the end, those who master emotional silence do not become emotionless, they become unshakable. And in the final years of life, that is the highest form of strength. There is a subtle mistake many people continue to make even in old age, a mistake that does not look dangerous at first. There quietly drains power before anything even begins. It is the habit of speaking too early about what you intend to do, your plans, your ideas, your next move, your personal direction in life. And the moment you speak too soon, something invisible begins to shift, not in your plan itself, in how the world responds to it, because the world does not treat your future plans as neutral information. It treats them as invitations for judgment, interference, and silent resistance. In youth, people often share their dreams out of excitement. They want validation, they want encouragement, they want emotional support. But in old age, the stakes are different. At that stage of life, every plan you mention is no longer just a thought. It becomes a point of evaluation. People begin to assess whether you are capable, whether you are realistic, whether you are still in touch with reality. And without realizing it, you allow others to enter a space that should remain private until execution. There is a powerful psychological principle here. Once a plan is spoken too early, it becomes vulnerable to outside influence. Not because words have power alone, because people do. Some will discourage you subtly, not directly, but through doubt disguised as concern. They will say things like, "Are you sure at this age? Maybe it's better to be realistic." That sounds difficult for someone like you. And these sentences may sound harmless, but they begin to plant hesitation inside your mind. And hesitation is the beginning of collapse. Even worse, there are people who will listen not to support you, out to measure you. They observe your ideas like weak points in a structure. They identify where you are emotionally invested, where you are uncertain, where you are overly confident, and then they adjust how they interact with you accordingly. This is something Robert Greene often highlights in his work, that human beings rarely respond to what you say. They respond to what they can use from what you say. When you speak too early about your future, you give people raw material to form expectations. And expectations are dangerous because once expectations are formed, two things happen. If you succeed, people resent you for not failing. If you fail, people remember it more than you do. Either way, your emotional cost increases. This is why silence before execution is not secrecy, is protection. A plan that is still forming is like a seed underground. It does not need attention. It does not need approval. It does not need commentary. It needs space. But when you expose it too early, you risk changing its natural development. because now you are no longer building privately, you are building under observation, and being observed changes behavior. You begin to overthink, you begin to adjust for perception. You begin to perform your future instead of constructing it. And performance always weakens authenticity. There is another hidden danger. When you speak about future plans, your brain receives a false signal of completion. It feels like progress has already been made because you have verbalized it. This reduces urgency. It creates psychological satisfaction without real achievement. You feel lighter. You are not actually closer. So in old age, where time feels more valuable than ever, this becomes a serious loss because energy should be directed into execution, not into explanation. Another layer of this principle is social interference. Once people know your plans, they begin to attach themselves to them. Some will want updates. Some will give unsolicited advice. Some will insert themselves into your direction. And suddenly your personal vision becomes a shared discussion. But shared visions lose clarity, too many opinions dilute focus, too many voices weaken conviction, and too much awareness of others creates dependency on their approval. The result is simple but damaging. You stop moving purely for yourself, start moving in response to how others perceive your movement. Even well-meaning people can slow you down because not everyone understands your timing. Not everyone understands your depth of thought. Not everyone understands your internal process, but once they know your plan, they feel entitled to question it. So the wise learn a different discipline. They move in silence. They prepare without announcement. They refine without audience. They build without applause. And when results appear, they speak for themselves. There is a reason why quiet progress creates stronger respect, because it removes the stage of doubt. People do not have time to criticize what is already complete. They can only react. And reaction is always weaker than interruption. When you announce too early, you invite interference before strength is formed. But when you act first, you control the narrative after. There is also emotional discipline involved here. The more you talk about future plans, the more emotionally attached you become to their outcome. And emotional attachment reduces flexibility. If something needs to change, you resist it, not because it is wrong. This creates internal conflict between reality and identity, and that conflict drains energy. Silence before execution keeps identity flexible. It allows adjustment without ego damage. It protects you from being trapped by your own words. In old age, this becomes even more important because time feels limited and emotional investment becomes heavier. Every spoken plan carries weight. Every declared intention creates pressure, and pressure reduces clarity. So the principle becomes simple. Do not announce what is still forming. Do not expose what is still fragile. Do not seek validation for what has not yet been tested by reality. Let your actions mature in private. Let your discipline build in silence. Let your results create the introduction. There is a deeper dignity in this approach. A person who does not overexpose their future is perceived as composed, unpredictable in a grounded way, stable in their direction, unshaken by external noise, and this creates natural authority. Because people trust those who do not constantly reveal their internal process, they feel there is depth, something not immediately accessible, and depth always commands respect. So in the end, the rule is not about secrecy for its own sake. It is about preserving energy, protecting focus, maintaining clarity, avoiding premature interference. Your future does not need to be spoken to exist. It needs to be built. And when it is strong enough, will speak on your behalf, silently at first, then undeniably.